Hello everyone, and tonight we're going to talk about the three minds: the sensory mind, the intermediate mind, and the inner mind. We encourage everyone to experience and learn for themselves, not just relying on what we have read or been told or heard. To learn about ourselves for ourselves is wonderful, magical, and gives inspiration in life as well as motivation to want to learn more. Tonight's talk will give us some information that will help understand more about how the essence can inform us and express itself. The consciousness or essence, remember, is a forgotten aspect of our psychology. It is dominated and trapped by the ego. When we activate it, we start to uncover many truths and gain many experiences for ourselves. Why can't we access it now? Well, the essence stopped developing, remember, when we were 3, 4, or 5. Yet it exists in potential, latent in our brain, waiting for us to create and provoke the right situations, the right conditions for it to be activated. The essence contains much knowledge within it. What kind of knowledge? Past lives, what happens after death, secrets of nature, the superior dimensions, etc. We're going to look at the mechanism for experiences and how the knowledge arrives in our mind, and what the situation is now in relation to our minds. But first of all, let's remind ourselves of the possibilities of the essence. Here is a quote from the great author Samael Aun Weor in his book called Revolutionary Psychology. In the chapter entitled The Essence, he writes, "The liberated essence gives us an intimate beauty, and from that beauty comes perfect happiness and true love. The essence has multiple perfect senses and extraordinary natural powers. When we die to ourselves, when we dissolve the psychological self," he's relating to the ego here, "we enjoy the precious senses and powers of the essence." What are those precious senses and powers? Well, we've spoken about those in a few previous lectures already. The qualities of the essence: creativity, intelligence, perception, intuition, willpower, the ability to find solutions, comprehensions, transcendental experiences, and all kinds of things all belong to the essence. But as we said, they exist in potential. They exist in a latent state. We cannot access them at the moment. Bit by bit, however, as we do complete this work and we do progress in the work, the qualities of the essence start to manifest themselves. They start to show themselves. And this lecture will show exactly the mechanism and how this takes place. We say we have three minds: the sensual mind, the intermediate mind, and the inner mind. Let's have a look at how they work. The sensual mind. This relies on ideas formulated based on information provided by the senses. And here we have, of course, the senses that we know: the touch, sight, taste, hearing, and smell. The intermediate mind formulates ideas based on beliefs. This is related to what we have read, what somebody has told us, what we have been taught, and so on. Thirdly, the inner mind. From the inner mind, we can access knowledge directly from the superlative consciousness of the being. This is the information that I was talking to you about, that lies latent in the brain. It's the information that's held by our essence. It's the information that we can access once we start to activate the essence through the exercises of learning to live from moment to moment, of learning to remember ourselves. As we remember ourselves, this information comes bit by bit down into our minds for us to actually know and recognize and use. Let's have a look at how all of these minds work together. For example, here is a plant, and the sensual mind is based, as we said, the ideas are based on the senses. So the sensual mind will look at the plant and will look at how it looks, what the shape of the leaves are, what it feels like, how it grows, and so on. Everything that is visible through the senses and apparent through the senses. In the intermediate mind, maybe we have beliefs about this plant or superstitions. Maybe if we believe that if we put this plant in the house, it will bring us good luck. This is the world of the intermediate mind. The inner mind can connect directly, however, with the actual elemental of the plant. This is the consciousness or the elemental of the plant, which is related to the essence of the plant. Let's look more at these three brains and how they work together now. The sensual mind works out its content of ideas via external sensory perceptions, data and information from the senses. It cannot accept anything which is not physically demonstrable or measurable. It devises sensory ideas. Generally, we say that the sensual mind is skeptical, materialistic. It cannot process anything which it cannot see, hear, taste, observe, etc. It can only process things which are tangibly evident. This is really how we get most of our scientific data, really, from experiments which are carried out through scientific instruments to measure them and so on. Anything beyond that is considered impossible or it can't exist. And yet we know that there are things that we cannot see that exist, and we feel things that we cannot explain that we still know that exists. They cannot be measured with the sensual mind, and yet the sensual mind still believes that its data is the accurate one because it can be seen clearly in the 3 dimensions. The intermediate mind is more complicated because it has a myriad of beliefs and dogmas. Our intermediate mind is based on everything that we believe about life, things that we have assimilated during our lives, through the personality, through our society, through school and so on. If you look back into history, we will see many sort of fanciful beliefs that we now know to be wrong. For example, people used to believe that the earth was flat or that the sun went around the earth. Now we know that those 2 things are not true. In some societies, people used to believe that, for example, in Chinese foot binding, that it was attractive for a woman to have tiny, small feet, even though it meant years of pain having their foot bound and broken as children. We have a belief that we are awake. We believe that we are awake, and yet, when we actually examine the situation, most of the time, are we really there? Are we really doing what we are doing? Quite often you see a football team come onto a field and the commentator will say, well, they're there, but they haven't turned up. We often believe that if we're just there, we are there. But we know already in these classes that it's much harder for us to be doing what we are doing, for us to actually be present, because that requires an effort. It requires the effort of self-remembrance. Other beliefs that we have are that we will live forever. Very few of us consider our own mortality. We just have this natural belief that life is going to carry on and it won't end suddenly. When I was a young woman, I had a neighbour who used to come round to the house and help me with the young children every day. And I would say to her, I'll see you tomorrow. And she said, if I'm still alive. She was a wise lady. At the age of 80, I think she was, she knew already that we're not going to live forever and that anything can happen at any moment. But as a young woman, I thought, of course she'll still be there the next day. Of course she's being silly by saying that. But in actual fact, I couldn't argue with it. It was a fair point. We also believe in our society that success is measured by money and wealth, by big houses and big cars. Oh, we must be doing well if we've got that kind of job and we've got that kind of wealth. And yet success in that manner still doesn't mean that we will not be able to avoid negative inner states, or we won't be able to avoid having headaches or complaining when things don't go our way. Our inner world is still as chaotic and as confused as maybe it always was, except that we have more money and trappings to deal with life. We also believe that this is the only dimension, and I'm going to talk more about that in future lectures. But every night when we go to sleep, we actually go to another dimension called the astral dimension. And yet some people can verify this because they can have those experiences. But for other people, that's just a nonsense. Of course, when we close our eyes, the world goes black, and then we wake up in the morning, and there we are in our beds. We also have a belief that our opinions are the right ones. It's very hard for us to change our minds about something. We've had an opinion maybe for decades about something, so it is very difficult for these things to change. We have another belief that humanity is evolving, that in time everything will get better. Now, we saw this in the level of being in lesson 2, that this is not the case, because time may progress, but humanity has always been the same humanity that they've always been. If people had evolved through time, surely we would have done away with many of the common ills that we have today, like famine, disease, the rises and falls of the economy, and so on. But these things keep on happening. We haven't solved any of our problems. We've just put in a little bit more technology, perhaps, and done a little bit more exploration in the wider field. But generally, we're still the same human beings that we always were. And in this inner work that we do, we have to stress that in time, everything won't get better. We have to actually provoke the situation within ourselves to remember ourselves. It's not going to happen by itself. Don't think even just by studying these teachings that everything will get better. It will only get better if we put the practices into action, if we actually try and learn to live from moment to moment, if we actually try and remember ourselves from what we are doing, from one activity to the other. We're going to focus a lot on these practices and these activities as the course goes on, because all the information that we get, all the knowledge that we get, and all the evolving that we can do comes from this base point, this state, this base level, which is the self-remembrance of the essence. We also have another belief that if we've read something, it's our knowledge, it belongs to us. We know it somehow. This is a common fallacy, because often if we read something and we like it, then we take it into one of our beliefs or dogmas, and we repeat it to other people, and it becomes part of us, part of what we think. And that belief has simply arrived from the pages of a book. It has not come from any direct experience. The inner mind is very different, however. The inner mind is the vehicle of expression of the essence. The inner mind is inaccessible to us at the moment because, as we spoke about the sensual mind and the intermediate mind, for thoughts to penetrate, for the consciousness to penetrate, for understanding to penetrate, it just simply cannot do it. Our thoughts remain here most of the time, all day long. Very rarely, except in moments of awareness, do we get any thoughts or any information from the inner mind. However, the inner mind is fundamental to the direct experience of the truth. We can call this the faculty of instinctive perception of cosmic truths. When it's fully awakened, it can experience reality. It knows the truth of things. This is a fantastic gem that we have within us, waiting to be activated. You could say that some great scientists and artists, for example, Einstein and Tesla and Leonardo da Vinci, would have had access to their inner minds because they produced marvellous works of art and discoveries using the real imagination. Mozart and Beethoven as well would have had access to this inner mind, drawing from it the music of the spheres, timeless music that was still very popular today. In the inner mind, we can find out the truth about our past lives, about death, about the dimensions. We can have vivid, direct experiences here. We can understand natural phenomena. We know about our karma, for example. We also know more about the natural laws, evolution and involution, and we'll talk more about karma and the natural laws in future lectures. Samael Aun Weor, in his book The Great Rebellion, writes about the inner mind like this. One who has opened the inner mind recalls his previous existences. He knows the mysteries of life and death, not because of what he has or has not read, nor because of what someone has or has not said, neither because of what he has or has not believed, but because of terribly real and direct experience. The inner mind allows us to experience mysteries that previously maybe were more commonly known, but we've become very skeptical now because we rely now more on the sensual mind. For somebody who is in the sensual mind and in the intermediate mind, as we are, we find it very hard to believe in things that would have existed from the knights of King Arthur's time and the Lady of the Lake, or what abounds in Ireland, the stories of the fairies and the little folk as we know them. These would have been something that we could have accessed in generations previously, this information, because the inner mind has degenerated over time. We weren't so materialistic and skeptical as we are now. And in those days, many more things were apparent to people and that were common knowledge. And even if we talk to old folk today, older people today in Ireland, they will still say that they've seen fairies and may even still see them to this day. But now they're mostly laughed at. As we are now, we are certainly limited by the two minds. We are in the dark. We don't really know what exists in the inner mind. It's a closed door to us, and that's why we have that circle around there. It's closed to us at the moment. The beauty of the earth's soul is unknown because we are caught in a labyrinth of learning. We are caught in the sensual mind and all the theories that go along in the sensual mind. And we are caught in the intermediate mind and all the beliefs that we have from all the centuries that have been passed down. And we simply exist in this condition, in this state. We exist in these two minds mostly. We really are stuck in self-sufficient intellectualism most of the time. And our perception is severely reduced by this, because even opening the inner mind even just a little, we see many more things. We can find out many more things about the truth of nature, the truth of ourselves, but because we are limited by the sensual mind and the intermediate mind, we don't even know that we don't know. As Socrates says, we are ignorant, but we are ignorant that we are ignorant. We simply don't know what lies within. We don't know of the great potential that a person has. Skepticism abounds, and the skepticism keeps that inner mind from being discovered, and it keeps the inner mind from being activated or producing any information to us. There's a very interesting tribe that lives in South America, and they call us in the West little brother, and they refer to themselves as big brother. And they are a group of people that are connected, as they say, to the soul of the earth, and they consider themselves to be guardians of the souls of the earth. And they've been telling their little brother, which is us in the West, that we are damaging the earth. But of course, because we, based in our sensual mind and intermediate mind, know nothing of these things, we simply scoff and poo-poo their ideas and say they're just half-civilized, ignorant natives. And yet this group of people are far more likely to have accessed and getting their information from the inner mind. And because we can't believe it, and we can't see it with our sensual mind, and we don't believe it, we simply reject their ideas. Well, we've got to start to think psychologically. We've got to admit the reality of our own psychology and the possibility of changing it. You will already have seen these ideas in the second lecture and the third lecture, where we're talking about transforming automatic reactions. This allows us to consider that we do have automatic reactions that it is possible to change. Don't get carried away by the thoughts. If we are learning to live from moment to moment, we are actively trying to be present, doing what it is that we are doing. It is the thoughts that take us away. It is the thoughts that keep us distracted or keep us always separate from what it is we should be doing. Bit by bit, try and learn just to see the thoughts. Just try and observe them, but without judging or condemning them. We're going to deal with the thoughts and the egos later on, but for now, our purpose is to strengthen the essence, is to develop the essence, and to give it the strength to see more before it starts to tackle the ego. When we strengthen the essence, the inner mind gradually opens, and you will find that you will get pieces of information or bits of creativity, pieces of intuition, perception that will just arrive to you. They will just come along, and you will understand things more than you did before. It starts happening in a very gradual manner. However, for this to happen, and for us to see this to happen, we need to take seriously those activities that we're talking about, the activities that have to be developed through conscious work and willingness, voluntary action. What I mean is willingly brushing our teeth and know we're brushing our teeth, willingly getting dressed and know we're getting dressed, willingly walking and know we're walking, and doing it as consciously as we can. When our essence gets to being a particular strength, a particular level of focus, then we can look at the dissolution of the ego, and that is what leads to the opening of the inner mind. This is what was meant by Pythagoras, and also the inscription in the Oracle of Delphi, which said, "Know yourself, and you will know the universe and its gods." Here is where we can find all of this magical information. It lies latent within us in the inner mind. We have to open the inner mind, however, get past the sensual and the intermediate mind thoughts, the beliefs. We also have to learn to concentrate, because the essence cannot penetrate the inner mind without concentration. In fact, concentration is the modus operandi, the language, if you like, of the essence. It has to be focused. If it's scattered with many thoughts, it simply cannot be present. It simply cannot function. So for the homework, keep going with the self-remembrance practices, but try and extend them. By this I mean extend them time-wise. So if you're brushing your teeth but you only remember yourself for the first little bit, try and remember yourself for a little bit longer. And in regards to frequency, try and remember yourself more often. Vary the activities and increase them if you can at this stage, because the more we do, the better our level of practice will get. We are activating our essence, remember, and to activate it, we have to do these activities. Also, every night, lie down, relax the body, practice listening to music. Try and do this every evening. And when you're doing it, relax the body and try and keep the body still as you can. If we move too much, we tend to spoil the concentration of what we're doing there. But if you learn to be concentrated, to be focused on listening to the music, what you are doing is improving the quality of the capacity of the essence. This is the conditions that we need to give the essence in order for it to start functioning. Also, check out the video and the text on self-remembrance. You can use these as a sort of as a reference, if you like, because the practices of self-remembrance, which is to use your ability to combine whatever action it is that you're doing with your perception of whatever it is that you're doing at the same time, that is what will bring about the self-remembrance. We've also got a video on the power of concentration, which I'll make available to you as well. We'll talk more about that in future lectures. As usual, send any feedback or questions to info@htsk and look forward to hearing from you.